So, how does Nick Reiner's history of drug use or mental health issues play into a possible defense, Lou?
It very much comes.
After Rob Reiner and his wife were gone, the release of their final will did not bring calm or closure. It detonated everything. What was supposed to settle the family instead unleashed outrage, confusion, and a wave of accusations that Hollywood did not see coming. At the center of it all was a twist nobody expected. Their son, Nick Reiner, long viewed as the most unstable and unpredictable member of the family, was named the largest beneficiary of the estate, a fortune estimated near $200 million. Insiders claimed the decision came from deep concern about his future and his ability to function independently, but that explanation only raised more eyebrows. Here is where the whispers started getting louder. Under California law, anyone found responsible for causing serious harm to a parent cannot inherit from them. Yet, legal analysts quietly pointed out a gray area. Nick had been formally diagnosed with a mental disorder, and some experts suggested that status could complicate how the rule is applied. Suddenly, people were asking questions no one wanted to ask out loud. Did Nick already know what was written in that will? And if he did that knowledge influence his actions in ways no one imagined at the time? These were questions, not conclusions. But once they surfaced, there was no putting the lid back on. The rest of the family did not stay silent. Romy and Jake moved fast, filing paperwork, hiring attorneys, and pushing back hard. They challenged Nick's share and also questioned the portion assigned to Tracy, the adopted daughter, arguing the legal structure of the inheritance itself. The result was a full-scale family rupture. Years earlier, Rob Reiner had told close friends, "My children are my lifeblood. I've never loved anyone more." Those words now echoed painfully as the siblings turned against each other in a brutal legal fight, fueled by money, fear, and resentment. Then came the moment that froze Hollywood. On December 14, 2025, authorities responded to Rob Reiner's Brentwood property, and within hours news broke that Nick had been taken into custody in connection with what happened inside the home. The film world was stunned, and another question instantly took over the headlines. Who would inherit the massive estate? A state attorney explained that California's so-called Slayer statute exists to prevent anyone accused of intentionally causing harm from benefiting financially. If the allegations were ever upheld in court, the law would treat that person as if they were never eligible to inherit at all. In that scenario, the entire fortune would be redistributed among the remaining children. And that is exactly why this case is not just emotional, it is explosive. Here's the part that stunned even seasoned legal experts. This law does not require a criminal conviction to take effect. A civil court can still enforce it if they believe there's more than a 50% chance Nick intentionally caused what happened. That lower threshold alone sent shockwaves through the public. But then came the twist that flipped everything upside down. According to Weiss Barr, the Slayer statute only applies if intent can be clearly established. If Nick's legal team successfully argues that he was not mentally competent at the time, the statute could collapse entirely. And if that happens, the door to the inheritance swings wide open. That means a court could legally decide that Nick still qualifies to receive every dollar. The reaction was instant fury. People weren't just shocked, they were livid. Many started asking if justice could truly exist when technicalities hold this much power. But the outrage didn't stop there. What truly poured gasoline on the fire was what surfaced next: the leaked contents of Rob Reiner's final will. The document appeared online without warning, and what it revealed transformed grief into nationwide outrage overnight. According to reports, the will was written roughly 2 years before Rob and Michelle's passing. Friends, colleagues, and longtime industry partners were blindsided. This wasn't a routine estate plan. It was a decision that stunned everyone who thought they knew him. The biggest revelation was impossible to ignore. Rob Reiner allegedly left a staggering 70% of his estimated $200 million fortune to Nick. That's roughly $140 million handed to the very son now linked to the tragedy surrounding the family. That share reportedly includes full ownership of copyrights tied to Rob's most iconic films under Castle Rock Entertainment. Titles like When Harry Met Sally, The Princess Bride, and A Few Good Men, along with ongoing royalty streams connected to Seinfeld, were all part of that package. On top of that, Nick was also said to inherit the family's primary Brentwood residence, a New England-style home valued between $10 and $13 million. The same home where everything unraveled, a detail that made the revelation even harder to process. Some believe Rob feared the clock was running out and wanted to protect his most vulnerable child. How? Others see it as blind devotion, love that ignored warning signs for far too long. Either way, this wasn't just a will. It was an emotional time bomb. The rest of the estate was divided unevenly. Around 20%, roughly $40 million, was reportedly left to Tracy Reiner. The remaining 10% was split between Jake and Romy, leaving them with about $10 million each. Because like we discussed just a few moments ago, there's the not guilty by reason of insanity which that evidence can be used for. In addition, it might be used for purposes of a plea to get something like life without the possibility of parole, to avoid something like the death penalty, which DA Hoffman has said may be on the table. So, that's what's called mitigating evidence. It's going to be compiled, presented, and we'll see how far it goes for him. That imbalance reopened old wounds and ignited deep resentment among the siblings. And then there was one final detail, a brief handwritten note included by Rob himself, short, personal, and heavy with meaning. It would soon become another flashpoint in a family already torn apart. I have always believed that each child has their own path, but Nick will need the opportunities I can give him. Those words cut deep for everyone who read them. They painted the picture of a father who loved fiercely but worried nonstop, especially about the one child he feared might not survive on his own. For years, Rob and Michelle stood beside Nick through chaos after chaos, failed recovery attempts, stalled careers, long stretches of instability, moments where Nick had almost nothing and relied on his parents just to stay afloat. Friends later said Rob's greatest fear was never money, it was losing his son entirely. So, Rob made what he believed was the last move he had left. He chose to leave Nick the largest share of the estate, hoping it would finally give him stability, structure, and one final chance to rebuild his life. In Rob's mind, this was not favoritism, it was protection. That intention born from fear and love is now the spark that ignited one of Hollywood's most shocking family implosions. Love, loyalty, and legacy slammed into each other with brutal force. Rob knew Nick was still battling serious inner struggles. His final message was short, but heavy with emotion. I just want Nick to have a chance to get back on the right path so he doesn't repeat the mistakes. Those words hit like a punch to the chest, revealing that the controversial decision came from desperation, not greed. As for Tracy Reiner, Rob's eldest daughter, she was left roughly 20% of the estate, estimated around $40 million. Rob reportedly considered that Tracy already had her own family, responsibilities, and stability, and he wanted to ensure she could live comfortably without financial pressure. The remaining 10%, around $20 million, was divided between Romy and Jake. Rob believed they had already built independent lives and did not need the same level of support. He had once told them, "You're grown and can stand on your own, but I want everyone cared for in their own way." The Brentwood mansion left to Nick was never just a house. It was a vault of family history, birthdays, arguments, movie nights, laughter, and pain. Rob wanted it to ground Nick, to remind him where he came from and what mattered most. But once the will leaked, public reaction exploded. Fans, critics, and casual observers could not understand one thing. Why would Rob leave 70% of his empire, including film rights and a family home, to a son now accused of being involved in what happened to his parents? Social media erupted overnight. How could he trust someone like that? One post read. Another went viral, saying, "This proves blind love destroys families." The shock turned into outrage fast. Experts soon weighed in. Some psychologists suggested Rob's pattern of rescuing, instead of setting boundaries, may have unintentionally created entitlement. One expert said plainly that love without limits can become destructive. Public sympathy shifted toward Jake and Romy. They lived quietly, stayed out of headlines, never demanded money, and now found themselves trapped in a scandal they never caused. There was anger, but also sadness, for Rob himself, a father whose love may have blinded him to the consequences of his choices. One viral post summed it up perfectly. Sometimes love without limits is more dangerous than hate. When the will was formally read on December 19, 2025, the fallout became personal fast. Jake Reiner was in Houston when an email from the estate management office hit his inbox at noon. His heart dropped. 70% for Nick. Just 5% for him and Romy. "This can't be real," he muttered, staring at the screen. Dad promised he'd be fair. Fury replaced shock instantly. Jake handled everything, booked the earliest flight, and landed in Los Angeles that same night. He was done staying silent. He went straight to Lyons & Associates, the elite firm long trusted by the Reiner family. Inside the glass tower, Jake slammed his palm on the desk. "I'm Jake Reiner. I need to see Teresa Lyons now. This is about my father's will." District Attorney Nathan Hoffman spoke today about how cases involving family members are some of the most challenging and heart-wrenching, And obviously we've seen that play out over the decades with the saga of the Mendez brothers. For from your position in the courtroom, how does that family dynamic change things? This is extremely difficult for the family because they are being pulled in different directions. Valued well into the multi-million range, it stood as the crown jewel of Rob's success and the emotional center of the family. He also owned a beachfront property in Malibu Colony, one of California's most exclusive areas. That home generated massive rental income and added another layer to his wealth. Piece by piece, Rob built more than a fortune. He built protection, a financial fortress meant to support his family long after he was gone. Yet now, that same fortress has become the weapon tearing them apart. What began as devotion has turned into division. The Reiner story has shifted from Hollywood dream to cautionary tale. Love, once their greatest strength, is now the battlefield? Was Rob's compassion his blind spot? Did generosity open doors that should have stayed closed? Or is this proof that even the strongest families can fracture under the weight of money and grief? Those questions now hang unanswered as a family built on love faces its hardest test yet.